Now, I've played a plethora of hockey video games on this channel and over the course of my life so far. I've played every title in EA Sports' NHL series consecutively since Jonathan Toews graced the cover of NHL 11. I've tried my hand at older titles from both EA Sports and the NHL 2K series that were made during the early to mid 2000s. I've even played some of the earliest hockey games ever made for console, such as NHL 94, Mutant League Hockey, or Mario Lemieux Hockey. Whilst all these titles have their fair share of shortcomings or technical limitations, for the most part, they are all pretty solid and enjoyable video games. Which is more than can be said about this waste of programming. This monstrosity to the eyes is Kidz Sports Ice Hockey, the worst hockey game ever made. Kidz Sports Ice Hockey was developed by budget company Data Design Interactive, was published by Bold Games, and was released exclusively for the Nintendo Wii between January and May of 2008 in North America, Europe, and Australia. It is the second title in the Kidz Sports series, preceded by Kidz Sports Basketball in 2006, and followed shortly after by Kidz Sports International Soccer and Kidz Sports Crazy Mini Golf, both of which were released just a few months later than Ice Hockey in late 2008. To say that this game was very poorly received by both fans and critics upon launch is an understatement. IGN gave the game a 1 out of 10, calling it a quick cash-in on the Wii's current success, citing the fact that it looks like it has been copy and pasted from other kids' sports games, but with hockey slapped on top of it, which when looking at other games in the series, they're not wrong, and also said that it offers very little to gamers looking for a properly tested, entertaining, worthwhile purchase, whilst GameZone gave it a slightly more generous 2 out of 10, with the final statement, if at all possible, you should consider purchasing a different game. One that will justify paying what you expect to spend. A game that is worthy of being called a game. Yikes! Now, those of you that have never had the displeasure of playing this game are probably thinking, surely it can't be that bad. There must be something fun about it, right? Oh boy, are you in for a disappointing time. Allow me to take you through each facet of this game bit by bit, so I can show you just how awful this game really is. Just before we get started though, I want to preface this by saying that Kidz Sports Ice Hockey is of course a game marketed towards children, so some of my criticisms of the game as a 22-year-old may have been designed in a certain way to make it easier or more appealing to a younger audience. That doesn't mean it is immune from criticism, however, as I can guarantee that even children had a tough time finding enjoyment in this for reasons I'm about to discuss. So without further ado, let's do this. Since there are plenty of negatives surrounding this game that will be discussed in the following minutes, I figured I would begin with the least awful part, and that is the music! Don't get me wrong, the music itself is nothing special, it's incredibly generic and very repetitive, but it is the least bad thing about this entire game. The lesser of all the evils, if you will. The game only has 2 different pieces of music. The menu music, which sounds like this, and the in-game music, which sounds like this. These tracks loop again and again until you decide to turn the console off and wallow in your regret for ever deciding to purchase this title. The problem is, you can't escape the music. It never stops. The only place that doesn't have this music, or any music at all, is the very opening screen, where you are prompted to press the A button. You would think that a sports game would have music on the opening screen to get you pumped up and excited to play, but alas, Kidz Sports Ice Hockey didn't get the memo. The opening screen just has this eerie silence about it, like it too has lost the will to live along with the player. There's also nobody in the crowd watching any of the games, so there is no sound coming from the stands. There's no cheering when the home team scores, booing when the opposing team ties the game, or applause when a nice move or a smart play is made. There's just silence. This makes each game feel lifeless and have no personality, as there is no one there to react to what you do. Definitely shows you how much care and attention to detail Data Design Interactive put into this game, huh? Next, we have the controls. Just 2 words are needed to describe the controls of this game. Needlessly frustrating. With the Wii's groundbreaking motion control capabilities for its time incorporated into the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, the developers of this game decided that they really wanted to utilize these motion controls to make you feel like you're actually moving like your players do and playing like a real hockey player does. The problem is, these janky controls resulted in a confusing and rather overwhelming set of moves that require you to do the stupidest of actions to shoot the puck in a certain way, steal the puck off an opposing player, or even win a face-off. That said, some of the buttons on the controller are utilised to do the very basic stuff, such as change your player, use a turbo boost, or activate a protective shield around your player. Yeah, I don't know why that's in this game either. What's worse is that half the time you try to execute one of these motion-reliant moves, the game either struggles to register it or doesn't pick up the movement at all, especially when you're trying to take a shot. I'll be sitting there shaking my Wii Remote to the point that it looks like I'm trying to pleasure the controller and my player still won't have taken a shot, or the puck gets taken off him by an opposing player several seconds later. If your game has motion controls and requires certain motions to complete even the most basic of tasks in your game, like passing or shooting, you kinda have to make sure they work very well. Otherwise, the game becomes just unplayable. I think it's time we talk about the in-game experience now, and oh boy is there a lot to talk about in this part. Visually, this game is pretty horrible to look at, even by Nintendo Wii standards. Sure, a game that was released 11 years ago now will struggle to compare to the graphical standards seen in games today, but my god is it an eyesore. It does not hold up well by any stretch of the imagination. The saddest part, though, is that looking at the screen is the most bearable part of the in-game experience. And look at it! It's bloody awful! The commentator heard throughout the game is the most bland and boring announcer out there. He has a dozen or so lines of dialogue that are recycled again and again throughout a game, with no variety or variation in its delivery. This isn't helped by how annoyingly the lines are delivered in the first place. Hearing him say,
Warthogs versus Team Inferno. Get ready. Warthogs take the lead. Interception. Interception. And a period. Change end.
Is just painful to my ears. He talks worse than I do. He's even worse than the menu music. In fact, I would genuinely rather hear that same menu music looped throughout the entire game than hear this commentator's dialogue just one more time. The actual gameplay itself isn't much better, to be honest. My main example to highlight just how broken the gameplay is the game's special shot, which is a move you can activate when your skill bar is at least half full. To activate your special shot, you press the B button and swing the Wii Remote in the normal shooting motion. This will send a super powerful shot towards goal and increase your chance of scoring. So much so that nearly every single time you do it, you will score. You can quite literally score a special shot goal from anywhere in front of the net in the offensive zone and have at least a 50-50 chance to score from the neutral zone too. The AI doesn't even try to stop you shooting or try to block the shot when you're winding up a special shot. They just let you send it towards net and get an easy goal. I must say, they are the most polite opponents I've ever played against. They must be Canadian. Changing players is also a bit of a nightmare too. Whether it's due to how awful the game looks, or the poor colour choices for the players, I don't know. But switching between your players, especially when you don't have the puck, is incredibly confusing, because you never actually know which player you are. The player you are controlling at the time is supposed to have a different coloured circle in the middle of the circle underneath them as a clear visible indicator. However, the smaller circle just doesn't stand out enough from the other circle, meaning you can't really see who you're actually controlling. Seeing who has the puck is another difficult job in this game too. The puck has a blue ring around it to indicate who has it or where it is on the ice, but it is so difficult to make out when combined with not being able to see which player you are controlling. In every game I have played, I have ended up having to spin around in circles at least 3 or 4 times a game just to figure out who I was actually playing as or where the puck actually was. But hands down, the worst part about the gameplay in Kidz Sports Ice Hockey is the opposing team's AI. It is wholeheartedly the worst AI I have ever seen in a hockey game, and likely in any game in general. For example, if you have the puck and decide to just stand still, either to take a minute to set up a play or to just take a breather, the opposing team will do one of 2 things. Either A, it will also stand still and wait for you to make a move, or B, it will move between the same 2 or 3 different places on the ice until you finally make a move. On normal difficulty, the opposing team will refuse to come and get the puck off you, to the point where they will stand and wait for an entire period if they have to. I have even had several instances where all 3 opposing players just began skating around me like I was some sort of planet and they were stuck in my orbit. Though they will eventually come and take the puck off you, even against the hardest difficulty possible, the AI is still dumb as a doorknob. In order to find some form of entertainment in this game full of disappointment, I decided to make up my own game, which I called How Long Can I Stand Still Before the Other Team Finally Took the Puck Off Me? And, spoiler alert, the opposing team took far too long. Playing this game within the game was the most fun I had whilst playing Kidz Sports Ice Hockey. A little game that I made up in order to conquer my immense boredom was more fun than the actual game itself. It only took me a few seconds to come up with too. But to be fair, that's probably longer than the developers took to copy and paste this thing together, so I'm not surprised. Now, if you think that's all this game has to offer, don't you worry, as Kidz Sports Ice Hockey also has mini-games. The mini-games somehow manage to find different ways to be just as bad as the rest of the game, as they really do live up to their mini title. There are 3 different mini-games available in this game: slalom, target practice, and penalty shootout, and several of them easily take less than a minute to complete, some even less than 30 seconds, with the aim of these mini-games to either beat a certain time, get a certain score, or stop a certain number of shots, all of which are really low targets of course, because it's a game marketed at kids. The most irritating thing about these mini-games though, is that several of them change their control schemes completely compared to the rest of the game. When your game is especially marketed at kids, that's not exactly the best way to teach them how to play. You know, considering they're kids. The game also has a few other game modes, such as a knockout mode, where you play every other team in the game and try to be the last team standing, and a playoff championship mode, but I've got to be honest, I had no interest in giving either of these modes a go after my experience with the first two modes I played. Besides, they are basically just a longer version of play now anyway, so why put myself through such misery again only to suffer the same results? So, in conclusion, Kidz Sports Ice Hockey is a terrible game that no one, either young or old, should ever have the misfortune of playing. Its obvious lack of attention to detail, its terrible gameplay, its awful control scheme, and it being void of any sort of care from its developers combine to make a truly horrific experience that I would not wish on my worst enemy. The worst part about all this, though, is that I've spent a noticeable amount of time either playing this game or talking about this game for this video, when I instead could have been doing something 1,000 times more interesting, such as staring blankly at the ceiling, sitting in silence, or even watching paint dry. Time is fleeting, kids, so don't spend it playing shit like this. And that was a look at Kidz Sports Ice Hockey, the worst hockey game ever made. What do you think about this game? Also, what do you think about this style of video? Is there another bad hockey game you would like me to make a video on? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Andy, Chris Gadsby, Dave, David, Kalesbro, Martin Tolness, Matt DeWild, Max Artis, and Nat Marlowe, as well as a huge thank you to Cam Montgomery and Ryan Todd for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.